Welcome to the weekly news currents. This week, we have Campaign 2024 congressional races. Experts say House and Senate control could flip. Winner of World Championship pumpkin weigh-off clocks in at 2,471 pounds. Go big or gourd home. John Kinsel Sr., one of the last living code talkers, dies at 107. Rare California condor released back into the wild. Destination Transylvania. This week in history, with one message in a network called ARPANET, the internet was born. Who am I? Faces and places. Remember when, before CDs and digital files, we listened to music on records, LPs, 45s, and 78s. Campaign 2024 congressional races. Experts say House and Senate control could flip. November 5th is Election Day, but this year's ballot includes a lot more than just who will be president for the next 4 years. Voters are also choosing many of the members of Congress. What do the members of Congress do? They make laws for the entire nation. First, let's take a look at the Senate. Who is the other house of Congress? The House of Representatives. The U.S. Senate contains exactly 100 members, 2 from each state. Who are the 2 senators from your state? Do you know what party they each belong to? These members gather in the Senate chamber in the U.S. Capitol building, shown here. There, they discuss and vote on bills that can become laws. Currently, the Democratic Party, along with 4 independents, controls the Senate with 51 seats, as opposed to the 49 seats held by Republicans. Who is the current Senate Majority Leader? Senator Chuck Schumer. But more Democrats than Republicans are up for re-election this year, so Republicans think they might be able to flip the Senate, winning back the majority. If this happens, Republicans will need to select a new leader, as Mitch McConnell plans to step down from Senate leadership. Why is this position so important? The majority leader decides what bills are voted on. Because Senate terms last for 6 years, about 1/3 of these seats are up for re-election every 2 years. Some of this year's Senate races are considered safe for one party or the other, but other races are considered close or even a toss-up, meaning that either party could win it. The labeled states here have Senate seats up for re-election. The states shown in yellow have close Senate races, making them more likely to flip. Of those states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are considered the closest. Right now, the race in Wisconsin between Tammy Baldwin and Eric Hovde is incredibly close. What is happening in your state? The race for the House is expected to be close. The House of Representatives has 435 seats. Why does it have so many more than the Senate? The House of Representatives seats are based on population, with 1 for each of the 435 voting districts. Do you know your district representative? This means that the states with the largest populations have the largest number of representatives. What are the 2 most populated states? California and Texas. Smaller states might have just a few representatives, or just 1. 6 states have 1 representative: Alaska, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont, and Delaware. House terms run for just 2 years each. This means that every U.S. representative is up for re-election every 2 years. Do you think it's good that the Senate and the House are set up in these different ways? Why or why not? Right now, Republicans have 220 seats in the House and Democrats have 212. Because they have the majority in the House, Republicans get to choose the Speaker of the House, shown here. Who is he? Mike Johnson. Like the Senate Majority Leader, the person gets to make important decisions about what the House votes on. Representative Hakeem Jeffries from New York is the leader of the Democrats in the House. Right now, experts say that either party could win the House. The race is currently considered a toss-up. There are around 16 seats that could go either way. What do you think will happen? Winner of the World Championship Pumpkin Weigh-In clocks in at 2,471 pounds. Go big or gourd home. Have you ever been to a pumpkin patch? If you have, you've probably seen the pumpkins that come in many different shapes and sizes. But what you might not know is that pumpkins can get big, really big. Each year, farmers from around the country gather together at the World Championship Pumpkin Weigh-Off to see who can grow the biggest pumpkin. In the last image, you saw Travis Ginger. He is a schoolteacher from Minnesota. He's also a world champion pumpkin grower. Ginger won this year's competition with a pumpkin weighing 2,471 pounds. That's nearly as heavy as a small car. When he's not teaching, Ginger is perfecting his skills as a massive pumpkin grower. How do you think Ginger is able to get his pumpkins so large? Pumpkins belong to the winter squash fruit family. Winter squash grow late in the season and come in many varieties. Some are lumpy and odd-shaped, while others are greenish-gray or speckled. While these fruits have hard rinds, they can be cooked or eaten. Do you like pumpkin pie or other foods that include winter squash? Pumpkins usually weigh between 10 and 20 pounds. This year, of the pumpkin weigh-off isn't even the largest. Travis Ginger has grown. He won the competition 3 years in a row. Last year, Ginger's winning pumpkin weighed 2,749 pounds. That pumpkin, nicknamed Michael Jordan, holds the Guinness World Record for heaviest pumpkin ever grown. As you see here, these gourds are so large they have to be weighed with forklifts. Who can read the quote here? Why do you think these farmers are growing huge pumpkins? Pumpkins are an important and spooky part of the Halloween tradition. In the US, pumpkins are most often associated with Halloween. In the weeks leading up to October 31st, carved pumpkins can be found lining the porches of homes all over. What are carved pumpkins usually called? Jack-o'-lanterns. Do you like carving pumpkins? Did you carve one this year? People around the world have been celebrating Halloween for hundreds of years. Experts say the holiday began with the Celts, a group of people who lived 2,000 years ago in what is now the United Kingdom. The Celts celebrated Samhain on November 1st to mark the beginning of winter. On this day, the Celts believed spirits from the afterlife had roamed the world of the living. Hundreds of years later, the Halloween was transformed to All Saints' Day by the Christian Church. The painting shows a Halloween celebration in the 1800s. When Irish immigrants moved to the US in the 1800s, they brought with them some of these holiday traditions. One of these traditions was carving of jack-o'-lanterns. Originally, root vegetables like turnips were carved and placed in a windowsill to frighten people or to keep out evil spirits. Here you can see an example of one of these earlier jack-o'-lanterns. Would this scare you if you saw it in person? In the US and Canada, the carved pumpkin was associated with fall and the Thanksgiving season before it became a symbol of Halloween. What is a symbol? An image or thing used to represent something else. Later in the 1800s, the jack-o'-lantern became more connected to Halloween. Now, more than a century later, carving a jack-o'-lantern has become one of the common and beloved Halloween pastimes. Why do you think people love this pastime so much? What is so special about it? John Kinsel Sr., one of the last living code talkers, dies at age 107. Kinsel and the other code talkers helped the U.S. win World War II. On October 19th, a man named John Kinsel Sr. passed away. He was 107 years old. Kinsel was a Navajo man who was one of the code talkers during World War II. Have you ever heard of the code talkers before? Kinsel lived most of his life in the Navajo Nation. From the map, where is this nation located? In Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. The Navajo Nation is the largest Native American reservation in the U.S. A reservation is an area of land within the borders of the United States that is controlled by the Native American tribe. The Navajo Nation is controlled by the Navajo people. The traditional name for the Navajo people is the Diné. Before his death, Kinsel was one of the few surviving code talkers. During World War II, Native Americans were hired to develop unbreakable codes for the U.S. military using their native languages. Because their languages were unknown outside their tribes, no enemy experts were able to break their codes. These men, who came from many different tribes, came to be known as the code talkers. Code talkers, like those pictured here, created more than 2,000 new words for military terms. They learned these words by memory and never wrote them down. Why? Their amazing work was key to winning many battles in the Pacific in World War II. Most Americans did not learn about code talkers until 1968 because the programs were secret. Why do you think this program was secret? The military wanted to be able to use these codes in future wars. Finally, in 2000, the Navajo code talkers were awarded Congressional Gold Medals. You see both sides of these medals in the picture here. In 2008, code talkers from 33 other tribes were also honored with this medal. Kinsel was honored and celebrated for his work during World War II. Here you see a quote from Bu Nurin, the president of the Navajo Nation. What does this quote say about Kinsel? What does it say about code talkers in general? Navajo code talkers became famous for their role at Iwo Jima. During World War II, the U.S. Marines relied on Navajo speakers for their most important coded messages. Here you see Navajo code talkers in Japan in the year 1944. About 400 Navajo men served as code talkers. The Navajo language was perfect for secret codes for several reasons. First of all, Navajo is very complicated tonal language. This means that the same words spoken at different pitches often have different meanings. Another reason was that Navajo was mostly spoken, not written, at this time. Why would this have helped make a code? It made it impossible for others to learn it from books. The words you see written here are in the modern Navajo script, which gained popularity after the war. Navajo code talkers created written terms of common words and used them for military terms. When they needed to spell out proper nouns like names of people and places, they used Navajo words for letters of the alphabet, like ant for the letter A, and so on. Can you see why this code would be hard to break? Navajo code talkers helped the Marines win important battles during World War II. One of them is often represented in this famous photo. Do you know the name of this battle? The Battle of Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima is a small island on the South Pacific Ocean, which was being used as an airstrip for Japanese forces. 6 Navajo code talkers, operating radios around the clock, gave orders for this battle while the Marines landed and took up their positions. After the battle, Major Howard Connor said that the U.S. would never have won if it weren't for the efforts of the Navajo code talkers. In 1992, the Navajo code talkers were honored with an exhibit in the Pentagon. A permanent exhibit honoring their service can be found in the Cultural Center of Gallup, New Mexico, and their remaining code talkers often appear at ceremonies and veteran parades, like the one you see here. Do you think it's important to honor veterans? Rare California condor released back into the wild. Malagra beat all the odds to survive. The bird shown here is a California condor. Have you ever heard of a California condor? California condors are the biggest land birds in North America. Their wingspans can reach 10 feet. Recently, a California condor named Malagra was released from captivity back into the wild. Based on the map, where was she released? In Arizona. Malagra's survival took a huge effort from many scientists and even other condors. Her story provides hope for the conservation of these birds. Scientists found Malagra when she was just a lonely egg in an empty nest. Her mother had died, and her father was very sick. Scientists decided to remove the egg because they knew without parents to incubate it, the bird would likely die. Scientists brought the egg back to the Wildlife Center. There, foster condor parents helped hatch and raise the chick. Malagra went to a condor school where she learned to fly, look for food, and get along with other condors. This summer, Malagra was ready to go back into the wild. Hundreds of people gathered to watch the condor go free. Since then, Malagra has been living successfully with other wild condors. Who wants to read the quote about this event? Scientists hope Malagra's story teaches people more about California condors. Although the condor population is getting bigger, there are still only around 350 California condors in the wild. They face threats of deforestation, pollution, and disease. Do you think scientists should have removed the egg? Why or why not? What would be another way to increase the condor population? Condors are important scavengers. There are two types of condors on Earth. California condors have black and white feathers and are slightly smaller than Andean condors. Andean condors are brown. However, both types of condors have bald heads. Scientists think this might be to prevent germs from sticking to the feathers. Why else might condors have bald heads? Condors are a type of vulture. Vultures are scavengers, meaning they eat the flesh of dead animals. Scavenging is important because it keeps the ecosystem healthy. Can you guess why? It stops the spread of disease born from decaying animals. Like other vultures, condors have a pouch in their throat. This is called a crop. Crops are used for storing food. Crops are helpful for bringing food to chicks who cannot fly or scavenge. Condors can live for a very long time. The oldest known condor, named Theo, lived to 79 years old. Did you know birds could live to be that old? Throughout their lives, condors only have one partner. Together they build nests and raise their young. Sadly, both species of condors are endangered. California condors used to live all over North America, but hunting and habitat destruction nearly caused their extinction. In the 1980s, there were only 22 California condors left. However, over the past few decades, their population has been on the rise. What is the most interesting thing about condors? Destination: Transylvania. Transylvania is a historic region in central Romania. This week, we're taking a look at Transylvania. Transylvania is best known internationally as the homeland of a fictional monster. Does anyone know which one? Dracula. But the real region is a fascinating place with a unique history and culture. Transylvania is located in central Romania. Its name means beyond the forest. The entire region has a population of around 6.5 million people, or around one third of Romania's total population. Transylvania is home to many of Romania's most renowned sites and structures. Can anyone here say something about Romania? The largest city in Transylvania is Cluj-Napoca. Cluj-Napoca is also the second largest city in all of Romania. Does anyone know what the largest city in Romania is? Bucharest. Cluj-Napoca is famous for its old and well-preserved buildings, and the largest university in Romania is located here. But Transylvania also has rural areas. What does rural mean? Of or relating to the countryside. In some small towns and villages across Transylvania, the people work and farm in the same way they did in the Middle Ages. They are considered some of the best preserved medieval towns in all of Europe. Do you think you could live like this? Transylvania has been controlled by different groups and nations throughout the years. As a result, its culture is a blend of different European traditions. German culture, Hungarian culture, and Romanian culture all come together in the customs of Transylvania. The people you see here are wearing traditional Transylvania clothing. What do you notice about these clothes? Explain. Transylvania is the most famous internationally for its association with vampires. Transylvania has been inhabited for thousands of years, and some historic structures in the region still survive. Here, you see one of the 6 Dacian fortresses of the Okrosti Mountains. These were fortresses built by the Dacian kingdom, which ruled over Transylvania beginning around 80 BCE to keep out Roman invaders. The Dacian fortresses are a top tourist destination in Romania and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. What is UNESCO? A UN agency dedicated to preserving and protecting culture worldwide. In 1431, the man you see here was born in the Transylvanian town of Sighișoara. He went on to become the ruler of Wallachia, a region in modern-day Romania, and went by the name Vlad III. He was a famously cruel leader and was often called Vlad the Impaler because of his favorite method of executing his enemies. Have you ever heard of Vlad the Impaler? He was also known internationally by another name, Vlad Dracula. In 1897, the novelist Bram Stoker used the name for a character that would forever change world literature, Count Dracula the Vampire. What is a vampire? A mythical creature who feeds on the blood of living things. Between this book and the 1931 movie adaptation starring Romanian actor Bela Lugosi in the title role, Count Dracula has come to define our cultural understanding of vampires, and as a result, Transylvania is now strongly associated with these imaginary blood-sucking monsters internationally. Transylvania has many grand castles and fortresses on its hills. One of the most famous is this one, Bran Castle. This building is nicknamed Dracula's Castle and is visited by horror fans around the world. However, Stoker likely didn't know about the castle, and Vlad III never lived here permanently. The nickname is mostly to attract tourists. Would you want to go to Bran Castle? Transylvania has many castles and fortresses, including the Fortress of Diva here. Characterize the region's architecture. Transylvania is rich with culture and history, and people come from all over to look at the impressive structures. But if you decide to take a trip to Transylvania, just remember to bring your garlic. What would you want to see in Transylvania? Why? This week in history. With one message on a network called ARPANET, the internet was born. At 10:30 p.m. on October 29, 1969, something very important happened. A man named Charlie Klein was working at the University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA. Klein tried to send a message from his computer, which you see here, to another computer at Stanford University. Where is Stanford located? In Palo Alto, California. This message consisted of just one word, log in. The Stanford computer only got the first two letters of this word, and then the system went down. An hour later, Klein tried again. This time, the entire message came through. This might not seem like a very important event, but it was. Log in was the first successful message sent in ARPANET. Who here can read what ARPANET stands for? This early computer network connected UCLA, Stanford, the University of California at Santa Barbara, and the University of Utah. It was also the earliest version of what we now call the Internet. Before ARPANET, there were very few computer networks, and they were all local. If scientists wanted information from a research computer across the country, he or she had to travel to wherever that computer was physically located. Individual users could not share information directly. Can you imagine how frustrating this must have been? Several computer scientists worked to change this throughout the 1960s. One of them was Leonard Kleinrock, who you see here. He came up with new ways to transfer information between computers. Kleinrock helped develop the first interface message processor, or IMP1. This machine could handle many different messages coming in and going out at the same time. This made it possible to build a true computer network. Soon after, all four ARPANET sites could exchange messages and transfer data to each other. New sites around the country and around the world wanted to join as well. Do you think this was a world-changing invention? Within a few years, there were computers connected to ARPANET all across the country. A large reason for the growth of ARPANET was that the U.S. government was involved in its creation. Why would the government want to have part in this network? It could help the military and other government sites communicate more quickly and efficiently. In the 1980s, the military part of ARPANET split off from the rest of the network. The rest of it continued to grow. By the end of the 1980s, individual companies started to create networks. This allowed individual people to access the network and trade information with each other. In 1990, the global network of sites had grown very large. ARPANET had done its job and was shut down, but what we now call the Internet was in full swing. People could now send each other electronic messages through their computers. What do we call these messages? Emails. Internet sites started to provide news, entertainment, games, education, and work opportunities. Social networks such as Facebook and Twitter sprang up to keep people connected. How do you use these social networks? Today, we depend heavily on the internet in our personal and professional lives, and it all started with one failed message this week in 1969. What do you think your life would be like without the internet? How would you think the internet has changed the world? Who am I? I am a 67-year-old television actor, television host, and director. I am best known for my roles in the television shows Roots and Star Trek The Next Generation. But to many people who grew up during 80s and 90s, I am best known as the host of Reading Rainbow. This education television show ran for 23 seasons and helped a generation of young people fall in love with reading. This October, I was recognized for my role on Reading Rainbow when I received the National Humanities Medal during a ceremony at the White House. I was given this award because of my work trying to help more people learn to read. Other members like Steven Spielberg and Ken Burns also received awards at the ceremony. Who am I? This is LeVar Burton. News names, places, and words. News faces. Bram Stoker, author of Dracula, lived 1847 to 1912. Hakeem Jeffries, New York representative serving as House Minority Leader. John Kinsel, Navajo code talker, lived 1917 to 2024. Leonard Kleinrock, American computer scientist who helped create the Internet. Mike Johnson, Louisiana representative serving as the Speaker of the House. Travis Ginger, Minnesota schoolteacher and big pumpkin cultivator. News places: Arizona, California, Minnesota, Romania, Washington, D.C., and Wisconsin. News words: House of Representatives, the lower chamber of Congress, made up of 435 representatives from around the country. Jack-o'-lantern, a decorative pumpkin that has been carved and illuminated. Reservation, an area of land within the borders of the United States that is controlled by Native American tribes. Rule, of or relating to the countryside. Samahan, ancient Celtic festival used to mark the beginning of winter. Senate, upper chamber of the U.S. Congress, made up of 2 senators from each site. Scavenger, an animal that survives by eating the remains of dead organisms. Tonal, of a language. When speaking the same word in a different tone changes its meaning. Vampire, a fictional monster that drinks the blood of other living things. Bases and places. Shohei Ohtani. The baseball hit by Los Angeles Dodgers slugger Shohei Ohtani recently broke the record for the most expensive baseball ever sold at an auction. Ohtani hit this ball on September 19, 2024, sending it over the fence for his 50th home run of the year. With this home run, Ohtani became the first player in MLB history to hit 50 home runs and steal 50 bases in a single season. Ohtani is widely considered one of the best players in the MLB, and is currently playing in his first World Series. Ohtani's 50th home run ball, called the 50-50 ball, was sold to an unknown bidder for nearly $4.4 million. This shatters the previous record, which was set back in 1990 when someone paid $3 million for Mark McGwire's 17th home run ball. Bidding on Ohtani's 50-50 ball started at $500,000 and stood at $2.1 million just 3 minutes before the clock was set to expire. But at the last moment, more than a dozen bids were placed, inflating the price until it reached this historic sum. Do you think Ohtani's 50-50 ball is worth that much money? Philip Zimbardo. American psychologist and author Philip Zimbardo died on October 14, 2024. He was 91 years old. Zimbardo was an academic who taught at Stanford University for a half-century, beginning at 1968. Zimbardo is most famous for facilitating the famous and controversial Stanford Prison Experiment. This was a psychological experiment where volunteers were put in a mock prison and assigned one of 2 roles, prisoner or guard. Over the next 5 days, the guards became increasingly hostile and even sadistic towards the prisoners, and Zimbardo was forced to end the 2-week study on only the 6th day. The Stanford Prison Experiment is one of the best-known psychological studies in history. However, in recent years, it has faced more and more criticism. Some have condemned the study as unethical and impossible to reproduce, while others say Zimbardo manipulated the study to get his desired result. Regardless, the Stanford Prison Experiment made Zimbardo one of the best-known psychologists in the U.S. during his lifetime. Have you ever heard of the Stanford Prison Experiment? Norway. The Norwegian government recently announced plans to raise the age young people can join social media from 13 to 15. This move is intended to restrict access to social media sites like TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat among young teenagers. However, the government acknowledges that this won't be easy. Despite the current age restrictions, more than half of all 10-year-olds and about 72% of 11-year-olds in the country are on social media already. But in order to enforce this age restriction hike, Norway also intends to implement new safeguards like age verification, which will make it much harder for those under 15 to access their accounts. Norway is far from the only country to pass laws meant to restrict teenage social media use. Australia is considering a similar ban, while France is currently mulling over a potential ban of cell phones for all people under the age of 15. Do you think these bans will work? Why or why not? Washington. Boeing workers recently rejected a new proposed contract by a wide margin, with around 64% voting against it. This vote comes just 1 month after a previous contract proposal was rejected by 90% of workers. The second rejection will now extend the Boeing's worker strike, which began on September 13th. The rejected contract included gains for the workers, including a 35% pay raise and 401k contributions. But this vote, the workers have sent a clear message. They will not return to work without significantly more concessions from the company. This strike is yet another blow to Boeing, which has suffered recently due to bad press and reports of mechanical failure on its aircraft. The company reported losses of $6 billion last quarter, and the ongoing strike is costing Boeing around $1 billion every month. News that the second contract vote was rejected only further damaged Boeing's stock price. Do you think Boeing will agree to their workers' demands? Where in the world? Test your geography knowledge with this feature. The Senate and House chambers are located in the U.S. Capitol building, which is located in this city. Transylvania, a city often associated with vampires, is located in this country. The winner of this year's World Champion Pumpkin Weigh-Off was a schoolteacher from this state. The first ARPANET message was sent between two computers in this state. A condor named Malagra was recently released in this state. Remember when? See, before CDs or digital files, we listened to music on records, LPs, 45s, and 78s. When we were growing up, we did not have compact disc or online music streaming services. Instead, we bought records. New records show that some young people are starting to pass up digital music technology for the warmth and precision of records again. Do you know how records work? The records have grooves in it, indicating different vibrations for each of the sounds. When an audio needle meets these grooves, it transmits sound information to the speakers of the record player. Do you think this is a miracle the first time you saw and heard a record being played? What was the first record you remember? There were many different formats for records. Each of these formats were named for the RPMs, at which the record spun. Do you remember what RPM stands for? Revolutions per minute. At first, most songs were released on large, thick records that spun at very fast speed of 78 RPM. They were first made of rubber, then shellac, and finally vinyl. These could only hold one song on each side, but that's all we needed. Today, people who judge audio fidelity sometimes say that 78s had the best sounding music ever. Did you ever buy a 78 RPM record? Another format for playing individual songs is shown here. What type of record is this? A 45 RPM record, or simply a 45? The 45 was a lot more portable than any other type of record. This meant we could bring many of them to our friends' houses for listening or dance parties. Did you and your friends listen to music together, either on records or on the radio? How important was music to you as a child? Did it become more important as you grew older or less? In the 1950s, a new format became popular. The long playing record, or LP, spun at 33 and a third RPM. These records contained brand new microgroove technology. This allowed LPs to hold a lot more music on each side. This was ideal for classical works such as symphonies or operas. The LP also caused a revolution in music styles like jazz, pop, and a new style known as rock and roll. Now artists were expected to come out of collections of songs at the same time instead of just one single after another. These collections are now called albums. Do you remember any of the albums pictured here? LPs were often packaged in fancy cardboard sleeves with photos, information, and even song lyrics. What is your favorite album? Why do you like it so much? The rise of vinyl records also led to the rise of disc jockeys or DJs. These are people who worked at radio stations, and they would select and play singles or LPs during their shows. They helped to introduce people, especially young people, to new genres and artists, and they influenced a generation of music lovers. Did you have a favorite DJ? Who was it? But some of us prefer to listen to our own records. No matter what format you choose, having the right record player was important. The needle and speakers did not have to be expensive, they just needed to get music out. One major innovation was the record changer, an invention that allowed people to stack multiple LPs and have them play one after the other. This kept the party going for hours. Did you have this kind of record player? What kind did you have? Are you surprised that young people are going back to this technology to listen to their favorite music? And that is all that we have for today. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.